So in this small book, we're on page 4, and we were talking about karma and how really karma is meant for us to have control of our future. Our karma is created in the moment, right now, and it creates the samsaras by which we'll be living in a general way tomorrow. And so she teaches that importance, and she places all of the responsibility within ourselves, to live properly, so that if we're supposed to get a sword thrust through us, that if we take charge of our karma, manage our karma properly through renunciation and discernment, that maybe that will be reduced to a pinprick instead of being, run through by a sword. And so you see how she was really talking to our own power within ourselves. And it's the power of the divine. Yes, we come to know that more and more as we grow in our inner life. But initially, when we still have that strong sense of I as the doer, karma is there to teach us to take charge of that sense of I, in a sense, and to be masters of our karma, to be masters of self-control, control of the mind and control of the body. So in number 4, she says, "Such is life, here today, gone tomorrow." So that ephemeral nature of things is a big and recurring theme in our spiritual life because we use that as a means to break free. It's that what do you call that? It's that one piece that shows you that we're not of the world, that nothing here is fulfilling because you have to constantly go and get another glass of water, go and get another glass of milk, go and get another piece of cake, go and get another car, another house, another friend, more children, that this world never fulfills. And it's just a tease, really. And it's through discerning and reminding ourselves of that we get to realize what a tyrant the world is, how it really does enslave us in a real way, not in just some make-believe spiritual way. It actually enslaves us and puts us under bondage and takes away our choice, right? I remember when I was in high school, I had a great minister at the church I was going to named Neil Gallagher. And Neil he was a great man. And, one of the things that he would say is that uh, you can't you can't teach a person beyond the degree to which they believe you love them. And so that was one of the beautiful things that he would always talk about, is that this need to love, that all teaching has to come through love. He says, if you ever find yourself yelling at someone, stop and ask yourself, have you ever told them that you loved them as intensely as you're correcting them? Because if you haven't, then you don't have the right to correct them at that level. So you always make sure that your motive for teaching is love, that no other one is worthy. No other teaching will actually will do anything. It's love is the sugar that makes the medicine go down, according to Mary Poppins. So constantly pay attention. This world comes and goes. So all of your troubles will come and go. If the moment seems unbearable, give yourself comfort by letting yourself know this goes, everything goes. And it can go quicker knowing that if you don't hold on to it mentally. So nothing goes with one except one's merit and demerit. Good and evil deeds follow one even after death. Yeah, and it does that. It does that not by memory following us necessarily. I'm not totally sure about the dynamics of that. But when you die, you're left with a vector there's when you do vector math. I don't know if anybody has done vector math, but for my computer science degree, I had to do a class in vectors. And so vector has what? A direction and a momentum, right? And so when you die, your karma stops right there, but you're left with a direction and a momentum from the way that you lived. And that's what carries you forward in your next life. That's what determines your decisions about your next life, as to whether you're going to have one or not. If you have firmly ensconced yourself in grace and the love of God, and have built your life on the unchangeable aspect of yourself, not on the mind and its needs, not on the body and its needs, but if you have set your foundation on that unchanging self within, the witness, in grace, in the mercy of the beloved, then there's no rebirth for you, because you'll walk right into that light, into that loving light, and all that is exposed, you will, in the grace of God, you won't care. You won't feel ashamed. You won't try to hide it. You won't look back at the things you're leaving behind. You'll walk right into the light of the divine love of God. But if there's anything in you that's not covered by grace, that you've been trying to do yourself, or that you still have attached to your sense of I, you'll try and protect yourself from that all-seeing light. Shame will cause you to cover, or to recoil, or looking back at something you've left behind. Was it Jesus says, any man who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not worthy of the kingdom of God. So it's that notion, don't look back at what you're renouncing. Renouncing always means looking forward at what you're going toward, not what you're walking away from. So mature renunciation is about the gaining of divine love. We renounce because of this treasure that lies ahead, not because we have to get rid of something or we have to do anything. We do it through inspiration. That is mature renunciation, and that's the kind of renunciation that takes us home in the right way, in a beautiful way, because spiritual life is about beauty. It's about love. It's about a great deal of bliss and joy. And to the degree that we renounce and discern, we experience that bliss and joy. To the point that we don't, the path can seem tyrannical at times, can seem very difficult for us. So because, it's funny because you'll hold the burning stove and all you have to do is let go. But rather what we do is sit there and complain to God that, why can't I hold the stove? I want to hold the stove. As it's burning your hand, and you're blaming him for the karma that's causing. So nothing goes with one except one's merit and demerit. Good and evil deeds follow one even after death. One suffers as a result of one's own actions. So instead of blaming others for such sufferings, one should pray to the Lord, and depending entirely on his grace, try to bear them patiently and with forbearance under all circumstances. That's quite a strong teaching there. We suffer as the results of our own actions, right? So that's our karma. We have to take responsibility. We have to live what we've done, what we've decided. We have to own it. So instead of blaming others, which disempowers us, by the way, it's not just because it's ridiculous to blame others, but this means to keep that power within yourself. If you're blaming others for the condition of your life, you're giving up your power, because you can't control others. You can't change their behaviors. So if you blame your life on the acts of others, you disempower yourself, and you become weak. And so by taking responsibility, accepting it, saying, yes, I can do this and I can change. So we accept it and we pray to the Lord, depending entirely on what? On grace, right? Not on anything else. Depending entirely on grace. And we try to bear them patiently and with forbearance under all circumstances. That's a tall order, because there's some pretty rough circumstances that can come up. But this praying to the Lord, I like to stop and think about that for a minute, because there's some fun you can have with that notion. We can pray to the Lord. Well, what are we praying to? Who are we praying to? We know that the divine is that Satchitananda, right? That the essence of divinity is Satchitananda. So you're praying to existence. That's an interesting idea. So you're asking of your own existence this prayer about your life. So that brings you into the now. You're praying to this moment. And if you want to mix Advaita and Bhakti, you can sort of see this as a prayer to your own existence, to your own self in your existence in this moment. Whatever you're praying for, say we're praying to become more loving. So you're praying that, and a lot of times we can just pray that to an imagined personality that we call God, and we just leave it there, and that's fine. But take this down to your own responsibility, where Mother has just told you that it's your own actions causing this suffering. So now you're praying to your own existence. Are you using this moment, this existence of yours, to back up your prayer? Are you asking not just in your words for the strength to be a more loving person? Are the deeds of this moment asking for you to be a more loving person? Is your disposition in this moment making the same prayer, to your existence, out of your existence, to be more loving, if that's your prayer? In one sense, to pray to the Lord is that it's becoming aware of this moment and aligning the prayer of this moment with the prayer of your mouth, of your mind. We're praying to love. We're praying directly to love, to that ananda, to bliss. And so that's where your faith can grow. Who would be denied by love? Love is there to nurture, encourage, cheer you on, love you, strengthen you, repair you, rebuild you, heal you, inspire you. So you're praying to love, to a pure love, to a love that has no conditions. So the answer is not going to necessarily be dependent upon your worthiness, but you can pay attention to the prayer that you're making to love. And then to wisdom. You're praying to wisdom, to your own wisdom. So are you using your wisdom? Are you listening to your wisdom in the moment? And is that listening equivalent to this prayer? Because we all know what we need to do, because realizing God at this moment is not a matter of needing to know something else. We know everything that we know. And Thakur tells us clearly, Holy Mother tells us clearly, it's not a matter of the mind. So it's not a matter of knowing in that sense. It's a matter of being willing. It's a matter of giving yourself permission to let go and to go forward. And so you check your wisdom. You check your obedience to wisdom. Those voices within you that may be faint at times that are telling you what the right thing is. Are you pushing against them? Are you ignoring them? Are you distracting yourself from them? Or are you obeying them? Are you changing in the moment according to what you know you should be doing? And so this praying to the Lord can have a lot of aspects and be quite a profound interaction. And so it's something we should be very aware of, because the strongest prayer, the prayer that will manifest immediately, is a prayer that's prayed when the mind, the words, and the deeds are in alignment. When you've got all three of those things aligned in yourself, your prayer, there won't even be a prayer. It'll be a divine will, actually, at that point. And it will manifest immediately. That's the difference between divine will and our will, right? I think we mentioned that the other day. Our will is always caused by something exterior, an imbalance in ourself, a piece of ignorance of some kind that sort of pushes us off and causes us to stagger in this way or that way, called will. But for the divine will, there is no will. What is willed is immediately true, because God is that. He has no one to give permission to, no one to do it for him, no one to convince. If God has a desire in the mind, what a funny proposition. But if God had a desire in mind, it would be reality immediately. And it's not caused by anything, an imbalance in himself. That's why they say God is self-willed, or the Divine Mother is self-willed. We are willed by the perception of ignorance, by a perception of lack or imbalance. But God's will is not motivated. God's will is self-willed. It comes from within the self. And as soon as it doesn't even appear long enough to be recognized as a will, before it manifests, it is.
So
So,
I had a
yeah.
question. I was thinking about the phrase. Thanks for explaining this, but the one we talk about depending on grace, and and we talk a lot about grace. I mean, one thing I can think about is that we talk about it because to surrender the ego, that this is nothing that I control or I did. So we talk about grace. Is is there like a timing factor also that uh, I mean, is there more because there's so much emphasis on grace? Is it just the ego part that or is it also saying that, oh, it'll occur when it'll occur, or that the grace is there all the time and that we don't see it? I mean, if you can just help me get a bigger picture of the grace when Mother talks about it.
Yeah. Uh, Grace is absolute, and it's fundamental. And basically what grace means is that ultimately everybody's coming home. Thakur makes that promise. Every one of us is going to have our enlightenment. We all are going to find our nature. That's grace. So it's not a whether you're going to do it or not, or whether you're going to be able to do it or not. It's knowing and having confidence in the fact that, yes, in fact, I will be successful at this. Why? Because Thakur says so. And the second thing is that grace implies humility. It implies a surrender to that grace. If you go in, we have that story of the sadhu walking along the banks who steps on the washerman's newly washed saris and gets chased with a stick, and God has to go save him, or gets up and leaves Sita to save him. I think it's Sita to leave to save him, and says no, and then he comes right back, and Sita's like, well, I thought you went to help him. Where were you? And he said, oh, I was on my way to help him, but then he bent over and picked up a rock so he can take care of himself. That's the change right there. To run and call to God for help, with the idea God will come and save, and bending over and picking up a rock. Now this conversation always, and it's funny because this conversation goes on in Christian circles all the time. Also, this nature of grace. There's the Baptist churches believe that you're saved by grace alone, that you can act any way that you want,
Right.
because you're saved by grace. And then, the good Baptist counters, well, you can act however you want, but the way you'll want to act will be in response to grace. So it won't be a negative thing. You won't be taking advantage of it, because if you understand grace, the response is not to take advantage of it. The response is to be inspired by it, to go toward it, to be grateful and to be thankful and to be open-hearted about it. So there's that argument. But anytime we say by grace alone that all these things, immediately the ego gets in there and thinks, that's a loophole.
I know that Thakur said, you should have your sails up high. Grace is always there. But then still, it almost seems like it is his will or our self will, the will of the self. I mean, can have in our opinion, have our sail up high, but as to when and how it happens is still up to grace or destiny or whatever call it.
It is carefully true what you're saying, but it's that matter where, when the devotee complains to Thakur, when Thakur says this world is mother's play, And the devotee says, oh, but her play is our death. And Thakur looks at him and smiles and says, ah, but who are you?
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, it's true. From a perspective, we are dependent on God opening the doors. And the scriptures tell us that nobody can realize God unless Mother allows it, unless she opens the door for us. But Mother wants to open the door. It really is a matter of perspective in one sense, because you have to be careful, because mixing levels of realization
Yes,
is a dangerous
yes,
thing to do.
yes, yes.
But the ultimate fact is that yes, it's Mother in you
Yeah.
who's living this life. That's the truth of it. There is no such thing as you living this life. And so to know that is to be fully surrendered to grace. To grace is another way of saying Mother's driving. You've let go completely and
Right,
have given up your own determination, self-determination, and you are guided only by the divine spiritual interests or spiritual ideals. And so, and then there's that aspect we always talk about, that infinite grace requires infinite humility. So, really, accepting grace and being completely surrendered are the same thing,
right.
right? And so, yes, it is Mother in us that ultimately that does everything. She's the doer. So, from that perspective, we're waiting on Mother to open the doors. But Mother promises, she says, look, if you're willing, if the ego is willing to die, if the ego is willing to have realization, you can have it at this very moment. So it's a conglomeration of things and a conglomeration of perspectives, and it really depends on where we are in our knowledge of truth, in our relationship with God, as to how we're working with that. But Thakur says it's always blowing, so that means it's always present. And that, yes, there is a certain amount of self-effort, seeming self-effort, because the universe is designed that way. That's the way God put it together. He says that you're an old goat and he's put you on a tether to a pole, and that length of that rope is your free will. That's what you get to work with. So within that 10 feet of rope, you better be doing the
Mhm.
things that are beneficial to your realization. That's required.
So maybe when he says that grace is always there, perhaps it's the same thing as saying that the Brahman and Atman are always there within us.
Oh, oh yes, certainly. But even more active than that, like, because grace is not a noun, grace is a verb, in a
Mm.
sense, and that the fact that we can learn and grow is the breeze of grace.
Mm.
Those people who are going out and repeating their desires, their acquisition of desires, over and over and over again in a form of addiction.
Mm.
And they wake up every Saturday morning swearing they're never going to go out and do that again. And yet every Saturday morning they're waking up saying the same thing. Uh, that's life without grace. You're not growing, you're not changing, you're stuck, and you're just going around and around and around and around. The fact that you can discern the situation, learn from the decision, and then act on that knowledge. Say, you know what, I'm not going out next Saturday, and to make sure I don't go out next Saturday, I'm going to do this, this, and this to make sure it doesn't happen. That's growing, and that's
Mm.
grace. That's your ability, that's your grace, that's your seeing, and
Mm.
your being able to change and grow according to what you're understanding.
Mm.
um, that's how so our ability to grow and change is in fact the manifestation of grace for us. And if you are learning and changing and growing and making your efforts, you can know that you are in God's grace. The winds of grace are blowing. And to the extent that you are willing to hear them and willing to act, to renounce accordingly, or to, uh, you know, change accordingly, then the winds of grace are taking your boat forward. and they are always blowing. You always have the opportunity to discern. You always have the opportunity to learn. You always have the opportunity to renounce. And if you take advantage of those, then you're feeling the winds of grace, you're hoisting your sail, and the boat is going forward. If you're not paying attention to that and your eyes are elsewhere, then the winds are still blowing, but your mast, your sail isn't up. So you're not changing yet. But even then, even if your sails aren't up, the wind can move the boat. Uh, because there are some people who are never going to put a sail up. They're going to be in this world of samsara for the long haul, but they're going to get home. So that wind of grace is still going to blow that boat. It's just not going to move very fast.
Thank you so
Yes.
much.
All right. She says, my son, forbearance is a great virtue. There's no other like it. And that forbearance is just to be able to accept things as they are. It's that forbearance that's going to allow us to see God. It's that forbearance that's going to keep us, oh goodness, forbearance and grace are so closely related. Forbearance is our response to grace, really, in one sense. Because I look at my own life and the length of time it has taken me to make some of the simplest changes in my life. You look at that and you just think, oh my God, I'm never going to get there. I mean, I'm the biggest fool of all. How is it possible? And it's that forbearance. It's that we have to sit down and enjoy God from where we are, without demanding more. Just be able to draw on the strength of God as we are, where we are, and allow that unfolding. Have faith that that unfolding is happening, and that change is happening. And that you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And to be glad in that, to celebrate in that, even if it wasn't a successful time or a good day, or even if you've made mistakes. Even in the darkness of your deepest mistakes, you can always know that grace is touching you. And you can always know that you can sit with Mother for a moment and talk about it. She is always listening. She's always present, and will never turn you away. That's grace. That's knowing grace. And being okay with that, learning to be okay with that, learning to use that is forbearance, to sit there and say, this is enough. Even the idea that I'm going to realize God is enough, right? That, of course, that story I keep bringing up all the same stories, but there's remember those two young men that go to their guru, and one of them is the older one goes to the guru and says, am I going to make it? And the older guru says, you see that mango tree over there? Yes, I see the mango tree. Says, see all the leaves on it? Yes. In as many lifetimes as there are leaves, you will realize God. And that boy walks away disheartened. There's not forbearance in that. There's ego in that. The younger student comes up, says, when will I realize God? And the teacher says, yes, you will realize God. Oh, when will I realize God? And he has him stand at the edge of the cliff and look out over the valley of this entire forest, endless trees. And he says, you see how many leaves are there in the valley? Yes. In as many lifetimes as there are leaves in the valley, you will realize God. And the young boy starts jumping up and down, super happy, skips off. I'm going to realize God. I'm going to realize God. I'm going to realize God. That's forbearance. That's forbearance. You don't care how long this is going to take, how much effort it's going to be, how much suffering there is ahead. You don't care. The fact that you get to see your mother is your life. You are thrilled to death that you have this opportunity regardless of anything else. And so that's forbearance. That's the person with forbearance can sit in a dark room locked away with the key thrown out, and sit there and joyfully sing and clap their hands for bearing their circumstance, because they know I'm free. This isn't forever. This will pass. And to hold on to that. So this is forbearance. There's great joy in proper forbearance. And it's really, it's such a huge element for us, because what can we see? We don't even know where we're going, right? We can't hardly tell up from down. So we look at our life and we think, oh my God, he would have that teacher would have needed to bring in a few more planets to hold the leaves necessary, for the rate that I'm going. But that's all right. That's all right. You can skip down the mountain knowing that Mother is your very own, and that you will indeed have your meal with her by the end of the day. That day of Brahma, maybe. But one must be patient like the earth, she says. So there's your great teaching. If have any of you ever been, well, if you've ever been up to the redwood forest in Northern California, and you walk through the woods with these 300, 400-foot high trees, with like 60-foot girth in their trunks. And the fallen ones are higher up than a house, these fallen logs that are house high. But as you walk through a redwood forest, there's several things that strike you. One is it's always silent as a temple. There's no underbrush, because nothing down that low gets any light, and there's not much forest life goes on there. So it's very quiet and very still. And if you sit there and you look at a tree and you try to understand that living being has been in that same place for 2,000 years, just growing in the same place with nothing happening for 2,000 years, that gives you an idea of patience. That gives you an idea of forbearance. That this tree has stood in a single place, unentertained, for 2,000 years. And that stillness of that forest and that depth of that, you can't help but understand the wisdom of a tree. We can't hear it, we don't know anything about it. But to be a living being for 2,000 years like that, there must be wisdom in there, in that silence, in that patience, in that forbearance, in that isness of 2,000 years. There's something very sacred and very holy about that. And when you're in that redwood forest, you can feel that. You can feel that longevity, that depth of being. So when I hear Mother say this, I always think of that experience. One must be patient like the earth. What iniquities are being perpetrated on her? Now look at, even now they're still cutting down those 2,000-year-old trees. Like, look at the evil perpetrated on them, and yet there's no retaliation. The trees aren't dropping pine cones from 500 feet on your head. What iniquities are being perpetrated on her, and yet she quietly endures them all. Man too should be like that, right? That patience and that respect. As modern society is going to have to make a big U-turn at some point and go back to the wisdom of these indigenous cultures, that they understood something that changed them, made them defeatable by our rajas, but their wisdom is going to have to be relearned. It's going to have to be picked up, to have to understand our existence is not one of separation, that we are born of this planet, we are born of this universe, we are of this universe, which ultimately has its seed in God. But even in the material, we eat it. It is us, it is our body, it is our mind. And so we have to think ourselves, understand that we are one with the things that we're eating and things that we're causing to go extinct and that we're destroying. We are hurting ourselves, and that's going to become very plain probably in the next next 10 to 20, 30 years, you know, for those of us lucky enough to think we might be here for that. There is no treasure equal to contentment, and no virtue equal to fortitude. Fortitude is that courage, that drive that carries you through patience. So there's no treasure equal to contentment. This is such an important one. I'm seeing this in myself. This battle is coming to the front for me. Because when in the monastery, you learn contentment because you don't have any way of of really changing things to any great degree. And I remember when I came here, I was so happy, so grateful to have this room that I'm living in, and things were working out. And now I've been here for 7 months, and 4 or 5 times this week, I found my mind spinning a thought and kind of throwing it into my awareness of like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have your own place? Just imagine if you didn't have to share a kitchen, worry about it being dirty or worried about somebody being in there all the time or whatnot. It's like these little things like that. We have to watch our mind because it just throws things up like that, and it causes a restlessness. It causes a discontent in us. And our life then becomes about that discontent, about fulfilling a desire or changing a circumstance or changing a situation. And so we have to watch the heart to stay content, to realize, because it's also with a vehicle. I'm right now on foot, so my whole world is just a matter of a few blocks in any given direction. And every now and then the mind throws up an idea. Oh, why don't you get one of those electric bikes? Or why don't you go find a small car, And with those things, you get a car, you've got gas to buy, you've got repairs to make, you've got places to park it, you have to then pay your insurance, and this is how we get beholden. This is how we get caught in this world. We start giving these innocuous little permissions. Who wouldn't think it was okay for me to have a car? Sure. Oh yeah, go get a car. As a matter of fact, let us get you one. And then I'm tied into it. I have to start being concerned about paying those things off and all of that nonsense. And the house too, that extra $300 or $400 a month it would cost to have your own place. And then having your own place means your own dishes and your own towels and your own sheets and your own everything else. And it just gets bigger. So this contentment should be guarded, especially because Mother is telling us that there's no virtue greater than this contentment. There's no treasure. There's no treasure greater than this contentment. And so having and holding on to that treasure is very important in a spiritual seeker's life. Pick your level. It doesn't matter really what level it is that you pick. If you've got a big house, nobody's telling you have to get rid of your big house, but keep it at one house. If you got a nice car, nobody's going to bother you have to go sell that car. Just be content with that one car and drive that car until it doesn't run anymore, and then give it away. So it's a constant watchfulness of the mind. Don't let discontent get you trapped, get you caught in this world, because it will take you deeper and deeper. And I say that it's not important where you draw the line, because holding that line, no matter where you draw it, is hard. Doesn't matter how much you have. It doesn't actually make any difference at all how much you have, because if that made a difference, it would demonstrate the point that eventually you can have enough. You're never going to have enough. Learn it from the billionaires who are out there still working their heads off every day for what? They've gotten everything they could possibly have. They've got more than they could ever spend, and yet they're still wanting more. It's the nature of the world. So Mother's saying there's no treasure equal to contentment, and no virtue equal to fortitude, which is that courage to be content, that discipline to be content, to draw your line and hold it. So All right, it's 7:04.
Was that just a before lecture question, or are we actually reading already?
We've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verses.
Oh, I shouldn't be late.
Oh yes, yes, it starts at 6 on Mondays. Is that you, Regina?
Am I like an hour late?
You are.
Okay. Um, well,
Yeah.
No
goodbye.
worries. No worries.
Yeah.
You can
It
stay
is
if you
6
want.
o'clock. It is 6 o'clock in California. Okay.
Yeah. I
It's
had the
true.
same thing, dude. I had the same thing.
It's 6 o'clock Mountain Time. Mondays is the only one that's at 6 p.m.
Could someone help me locate these recordings on on the whatever YouTube channel? Because I'm having difficulty. I mean, not right now, but afterwards.
Yes, I'll be happy to help you with that.
Thank you, Swami.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Just reminded me when you were talking about contentment and how the discontent grows, our needs grow. I was reminded of that story about everything is for the loincloth. I don't know whether you remember that.
Yes, yes. That's the right story. It's exactly the right. Do you know it? Do you want to tell it, or you want me to tell it?
You
It's a
say it. All right.
it's a funny story. You know, there's that story about that. There's a sadhu. Let's see, how is it? Oh, he just has a loincloth. That's all he's got. But he has this problem because there's a rat that lives in the cave with him there, and it keeps chewing on his loincloth. And so his devotees think, oh, what can we do to help Maharaj not have to have a loincloth with holes in it? Let's get him a cat. Okay, all right, you go get a cat. So they go and they get him a cat. So to chase away the rats in his cave so that he can not have his loincloth chewed up. Well, then the cat has to be fed. And so the monk complains to the devotees, you've given me this cat to chase away the rats. It's very nice. I have a very nice loincloth now, but I have no way to feed the cat, and the cat is hungry. And so one of the devotees says, oh, well, we give him some milk. Yes, where we get the milk. Oh, bring a cow. Give a cow to the to the sadhu. So now the sadhu has a cat and a cow to feed it. And it goes on, and as you can just imagine, it just keeps growing up until one day the sadhu's guru comes to visit, and the sadhu has this vast ranch with all of the things that started, and the sadhu and the sadhu's teacher says to him, all for the sake of a loincloth. this whole this whole thing. And see, that's the way to understand the world. It's for that first compromise you make comes all of this, comes all of your bondage. So that's why Mother says, going back to the beginning, your actions are what cause your suffering. Find contentment in the moment as it is. See it as perfect. If it's not perfect, call on God, not on the material world. If something needs to be changed, call on the beloved. Don't go into the imagined world for it, because the imagined world, everything has, what do they call those things? A treadmill. Everything has a treadmill in front of it.
Oh,
No
like
matter what.
a hamster wheel kind of. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Everything that will fulfill a desire for you in the world has a treadmill in front of it. Make sure you know that and make your decision wisely. Do I really need that? Do I really want to go that direction? Because you won't get there and be able to stop. You'll get there and you'll be on the treadmill. And how many treadmills do we want to set up in our life? You know, how many
Swami,
treadmills?
those of us who are seniors,
Yes.
we have to do retirement planning.
Uh-huh.
And it's very crazy making because, like, how much is enough money? Like, how to be responsible, because we don't know how much things are going to cost 10 years from, I mean, they're only going up. Maybe they're going to, and long-term care, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you should never stop working it's like, for me, I have to trust Mother that, you know, when I feel in my heart, like I've had to stop working and my husband is running on fumes. He's going to stop working and then that's it. It doesn't really matter. You know, then I'm leaving it to Mother instead of worrying about it personally. But like there's a responsibility issue. I don't know. It's hard.
It is hard. You know, I mean, I blurt everything else out. I might as well just talk about it all. I mean, I'm facing that. You know, it's for me right now. I have 3 friends that are retiring. All 3 of them have been lifelong professionals. They've all got wonderful, whatever you call that, pensions lined up. You know, they made a lot of money. They saved a lot of money. They're in great situations, you know, and they're all my friends. And so I know who they are and I talk to them regularly. And I'm the same age, you know, I'm 58. I have nothing, you know, and that was a big, and I'm only telling this to share the experience. I'm not making any requests. I'm not, nothing like that. I'm just talking as friends talk. So, but it's one of those things that when I decided to come here from LA, from Hollywood, you know, I left my monastery. I left my 3 square meals a day and my room and my bed and all of the bills paid and you know, had nothing at all to worry about. And for the 2 weeks when I made the decision that I was going to do this, I was going to come out here, that I felt like this was what Mother wanted for me, I would wake up in the middle of the night in panic attacks, Regina. I would wake up in the middle of the night and have a panic attack. I'd be like, you absolute idiot. What are you doing? You're 58 years old. You're moving out into the world. You're going to have to pay these bills. You know, what are you doing? And so you know, it was a tough time, and it is a tough time now because everything's working out. But I can never stop having faith. You know, it's like every month it's an exercise. It's beautiful, and I'm thankful that Mother, by many different means, is letting all of this happen. And I'm not boasting in any of this, but I want to say that I understand what you're saying, because every month my rent is a matter of faith that Mother's going to provide yet another, you know, another amount of money to pay the bills. And she absolutely is. And she and I have had several wrestling conversations, you know, where I'm like, well, Ma, can't you give it to me all at once so that I know it's going to be there? Do I have to keep watching the checking account, you know, go ching, 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 bing, ching, 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 bing. Can't you just, like, I don't know, just throw it all in a bucket somewhere and just have me find it and then I'll know. And Mother's like, you know, I mean, the number, anyway. I get a lot of spankings.
No, your lifestyle requires more faith. And you know, piles of money. I have a friend with millions. Okay. She worries about money, you know, and inflation and what if her children get sick and need, and health is wealth, honestly, in my experience. Money cannot buy you health. Well, to a certain degree, it can.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, it can buy you care.
My friend has glaucoma and macular degeneration, and you know, that's
no. What you're saying is absolutely true. Yeah. Yes, what you're saying is true. It does. Even if you have $1 million, you're not. $1 million can still burn. You know, $1 million can still fall away in a recession or in a bank failure, you know, or a country failure. I mean, everything's on the table these days, we know, but pandemics, yeah, that is absolutely right. You know, so what I'm saying for the situation that I'm have, it's not different for me. Every one of us depends on the divine. We may have layers between us and the divine that we think are fulfilling it, because one of the conversations I had with Mother was just 2 blocks from here is the post office, and they've had, since I've been here for 7 months now, they've had this big banner out front saying, now hiring, right? Well, nobody gives a better pension than the post office. So every time I walk up to Greg's house to work in the art studio there, I pass this big sign, now hiring. And I have sat with Mother, no longer, but for a while there, every time I passed it, I was thinking, is this a sign? Am I supposed to, should I go get a job at the post office? And so I sat in meditation one time and had this conversation with Mother. I was like, it'd be kind of nice, Mom. Then I would know that where the money was coming from, and then it would come every month, and then I could work for 10 years and get on their pension plan, and then easy peasy, the world would be done. Oh my goodness. I offended. What I heard in my mind, or how the answer came to me. Your Mother was like, what? She was like, you think that because the post office is writing you a check every month that somehow that's more secure than me? Really?
Wow.
And it was like, I really had to backpedal. I was like, oh my God, how did I not see that? And that's what you're pointing out is like, you see, we can put lots of things in between us that seem like we can trust them, but they aren't trustworthy. And we know that. That's why those billionaires are still going to work every day and still adding money to their piles, because there is never enough. That's the nature of this whole experience, for crying out loud. So learn it at whatever level you're going to learn it. That's why I say, if you've got a house, you've got a retirement pension and all of that, fine, draw the line there. This is what Mother provides. This is what's going to go. This will be enough for me. If you bring more, Ma, you bring more, that's fine. No, but if you don't, that's also fine. Because I do a meditation. This sounds ridiculous, but I do a meditation every couple of days where I imagine myself under the bridge down the road a bit, and I sit there and I run through my mind and I think, okay, now the moment will still be the moment, whether I'm sitting here at this desk in front of a computer screen or whether I'm down under a bridge, pulling out a hidden cell phone, looking around, make sure nobody's there to take it to do a class. If you can find happiness in this moment, interior to yourself, it won't matter to you whether you're under a bridge. It won't matter to you if you're in a horrible old folks home. It won't matter to you. It won't matter to you. Do your practice and build on the internal, unchanging rock of your heart. Place the Mother there, and she will always be there. And then if she leads you into a desert, under a bridge, onto a boat, into a mansion, into an old folks home, wherever it is, you will be in the same moment that you're in right now. So learn to be content in this moment, and you can always be content. Learn to find your bliss in an empty room, and that empty bliss will always be yours. It will never diminish. This is contentment. This is our forbearance.
Maharaj,
Yes.
I think about, I know that for anybody, especially me too, a possibility living under the bridge is a possibility. It could happen. But the only thing I tell Mother is that it is okay as long as you will be there with me.
That's right.
If you are there, that is the only condition I put. You have to be there with me.
Yes.
A nursing home is a lot more like probable. And that sounds bad to me. But I've thought about the nursing home. The bridge, I think, probabilities and possibilities, but, I don't have long-term care insurance, so who knows? But I've thought about, well, people in nursing homes can still say their mantra.
They can say their mantra. I lived at Holy Cross for a while, and about 5 miles from that monastery was an old folks home where people would go when they could not really be taken care of anymore. And one of the monks that was there is this old Mexican monk guy, and I watched how he lived in that old folks home. He was mostly bedridden, but he could get up and he'd get around in a chair. But he would go around and make a point of encouraging everybody every day. He would make his rounds and just go in and just, be positive, and he'd check in to see if he could help at the counter with anything, just he stayed engaged, and he stayed concerned about others. He didn't make it about an experience of himself. My friend Lalita, that I talk about quite a bit, that she was a powerful corporate lawyer and then had a stroke where she couldn't function anymore, had to go, completely lost control of the left side of her body and has never regained it. And that first year, in our conversations, how difficult it was to hear what she had to say, because I could see the truth in it, but there was nothing to be done, And she would be like, "What is going on? I'm going to have to spend the rest of my life in this bed. I can't get out of this bed. I have to live here. Why doesn't mother just kill me? Why doesn't she just take my life?" And that was like the first year she went through that, just this horrible loss of everything. Then one day she called me, and I immediately could hear in her voice a difference. And she said, "I've been so stupid." She said, "I thought that because I had half a body that I had half of me." And she said, "I've realized I'm not this body. I've been reading this for 40 years," she said, "and never understood." She said, "I'm still fully me. And I decided this last week that I'm going to be as fully me as I can possibly manifest through half a body." And so she said, "What I've decided to do is I have the caretakers come in the morning and get me into a wheelchair, and I wheel myself around." And she says, "I collect jokes and I tell everybody jokes. So I go around the rooms every day, and I stop in every room and I tell them my new joke for the day." And she said that has changed everything for me.
Wow. Wow.
You know?
Swami, you should do your blog on that one. That's a good story.
Yeah.
I feel if I remember nothing else, tell jokes when I'm old.
That's right. Just make it about others. Make your life about others, and everything will be beautiful for you. That is your divine nature. That is your purpose. Love. Love wisely, love deeply, love right now, always.